Okay, so this is hopefully a short video explaining what the NHS Bursary is, how to apply for it, how to claim back travel expenses, etc. So the NHS Bursary is for medical students in years 5 and 6. They can apply, so obviously we don't have to pay tuition fees if you're a UK student or European, I think. Um, and in years 5 and 6, the NHS entitles you to a bursary. I think all students, regardless of parental income, get £1,000 a year at least, and then you can apply for more on top of that, um, based on parental income. So everyone gets £1,000, and you can choose to send your parents' incomes, and they can test you for a means-tested bursary as well. And obviously, you don't have to pay the bursary back. Um, and I would encourage anyone who does think that the parental income is quite low to apply, because they actually give quite a lot of money, and they give a lot more money than the university gives as well, um, in terms of the bursary. So it's definitely worth applying for if you haven't already applied. So basically, the actual NHS bursary, in order to access it, I mean, I'll put a link in the YouTube description, but all you simply have to do is just type in NHS bursary, and just here's the first one. So you click on that, and you get taken to this page. This website's quite good. It tells you everything you need to know about it. Now, obviously, hopefully you would have applied. The deadline for it has passed ages ago, but it's fine if you haven't applied, because you can still apply as it's within 9 months after the course has started. So, although you should have applied at the beginning of the year, if you haven't applied now, you can still get your money. It's just going to take a little bit longer, and they'll give you like one big lump sum of all the backdated payments. So hopefully you would have applied already, and you would have already set up your account. If you haven't, it's fine. Just go on how to apply, log in to Boss, and you can set up your process there. So if you haven't applied already, you just click log into Boss. You get taken to this page here. If it's the first time using Boss, like it says here, you just register, and what this will do is it will start a process similar to student finance. So obviously you have to put in all of your personal information. If you want to apply for the extra money, you can put in your parents' information. It's exactly like applying for student finance. If you have applied, then obviously just log in. Um, log in like normal, and I won't log in because it will show like a lot of my personal information. But when you do log in, it will show something like this. This is if you have applied and they've approved your application, what you'll be greeted with. But that's basically the NHS bursary. And if you haven't applied already, then just follow the links, log into Boss or how to apply, and just register yourself. What you'll have to do is you'll put in your info. You'll have to send all your personal documents to some place in London or Manchester. I can't remember where. They do an assessment of your documents, make sure everything's legit, and then they send you a notification of award, which tells you how much they're willing to grant you for the coming year, and then you can go from there. Basically, the reason why I forgot to mention it earlier on is that if you want to claim back travel expenses, you have to have applied for NHS bursary. So a lot of people, they don't apply for this NHS bursary, maybe because they feel they don't need the money. But if you do want to claim back travel expenses, you will need to apply for an NHS bursary, even if it's just a standard £1,000. The reason for that is because then you are on the system, and they give you an SBA number, and then rather than the university paying you to your bank account or whatever, it's all paid through the NHS Business Services Authority. So when you fill out each individual travel placement form, you don't need to put in your bank details. You just put in your SBA number, and it's all traced back to your bank account. So that's basically the NHS bursary. In summary, if you haven't applied, then apply now. Because if you do want to claim back travel expenses, you will need to already have an account. So when it comes to travel expenses, a lot of students don't know how to apply for this, and also there's a lot of misconceptions. Even 6th-year students, sometimes when you speak to them, they don't know about this too much. But going back to the original page that we were on, you'll see that here it's download the forms you need, and these are essentially the forms to claim back the travel expenses. So I'll just basically go through it in a step-by-step fashion about how you would claim back each individual placement that you've been to. So you go in here, download the forms you need. These are the ones we need. Practice placement expenses. So it will have two forms. One is the actual claim form, and one is the guide to completing the form. Now, obviously, you can just stop the video here because if you want to, because this guide is good. I'll show you what it looks like. It's just like a full guide on how to approach each aspect of the form. Obviously, it's a bit long, but if you read it once, then you don't need to read it again. The first time you fill out the form, it's going to take a long time, but once you get used to it, it's just it's a simple job of just having a template and then just changing the values in there. So you can read this and it'll tell you how to fill in the form, but I'll just go through it briefly because I know that it's a bit long, and there's also some bits that need clarification. So I've got a couple of demo forms. Now I've got these forms. One is one form that I use for public transport. There was one firm when I was at St Mary's, I took public transport, and another form where I was at St Peter's, so I drove there. Obviously, I've removed my personal information from this, but I'll just show you how to actually fill out the form. So once you've downloaded the forms, which is this one, practice placement expenses claim form, just download that. It'll come up with this. The important thing to note is that it's actually an interactive form, so you don't print it out and write it. You just write the stuff in the form. I don't know. I'm sure Mac has its own PDF editor. I use Windows, and I just have a different PDF editor. It's called Foxit. It's fine. Any PDF editor will let you fill it out. So it's an interactive form. So you fill out everything online. You don't necessarily need to print it out and write. The important thing I would also recommend is that you have an organized folder where you keep the forms, and for each firm. So here, like Chelwest or Mary's or Peters. And the reason for this is because whenever you send off your travel expense claims forms, you need to send off the placement, you need to send off this form as well as your student cover sheet. So it's nice, say for example, for my St. Peter's firm, I have the form here, and actually this is not a good example, but say for example my St. Mary's one, yeah, here I have my placement practice expenses form and also my student cover sheet. So I'll discuss a little bit about the student cover sheet a bit later, but it's just nice to have everything organized, and I have an empty template here, which I can just fill out for each firm and just put it in this respective folder. It's important to note that basically they don't refund you any travel expense if you have one of your firms at St Mary, sorry, not at St Mary's, at Charing Cross. So if you have your firm at Charing Cross, then they don't refund anything because they say it's a home site. So you don't get any money for that. But as far as I know, everywhere else, you can still claim forms. You can still claim money. Sorry. So once you've downloaded your placement expenses form, have a think about which placement you want to claim for. A lot of people, they just do one form at the end of the year. Some of the 6th year said, but I don't understand how they do that because part of the form is putting in the details of your practice placement. So it makes obviously a lot more sense if you just have like one site. Obviously, it does give you an option to if you are based on more than one site, but I think it makes more sense and it's just a lot easier, especially when it comes to filling in this part. If you just have one site and you just submit one form for each site, rather than trying to mess around with doing multiple sites. But that's just personal preference. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could claim for multiple sites, but it just makes the process a lot more difficult because then you have to work out different costs for each of your journeys. So I'm just going to go through the form. The form that I use is actually the 2019 one, because they only just recently uploaded the 2021, but they're exactly the same basically, so it's not an issue. So when you have this form and you've decided, say for example your first placement back in whenever it was, September or August, I can't remember, once you've identified which placement you want to claim back expenses for, just have that in the back of your mind. Now, here's the reason why you need to have an NHS Bursary account is because you need your student reference number. Now, the way you find this is when you log into the Boss account. Um, when you log into Boss, there you'll be greeted with this page, and where your SBA number is, it's basically SBA number is here, student reference, but it's also in the student cover sheet here as well. So you can find your SBA number there, and it sort of ties your account to your bank account basically. There's other documents there. There's notification of award, which tells you how much they're going to give you, so that's useful as well. You can also go on the payment schedule here, which tells you what dates they're going to pay you, and you can put in your bank details here. But that's basically, so you find your SBA number on your NHS Boss account. So you put your SBA number there. Obviously, mine's made up there. You put in your name, your date of birth. Now your term time address. This is obviously where you live. You know where you live normally during term. For me, I live outside of London and I commute into London, so I put my address there. Obviously, if you live in Hammersmith, during term time or West Kensington or wherever, you just put that address there and the postcode there. It's simple stuff, and you know your mobile number, your email address, etc. If you go to section 2, your course and study base. Obviously, you put Imperial Medicine 50th year. Now here you can either put South Kensington or Charing Cross, the normal place of study. So I always put South Kensington because I did management last year, so I was in South Kensington. I've never actually had a firm in Charing Cross, so it doesn't make sense for me to do Charing Cross. But other people do Charing Cross, and it's fine. I've never been asked why I put South Kensington there, so it's fine. You can either put South Kensington or Charing Cross. Then nobody's going to ask you why, which one, or whatever. Another thing that reminds me is that they don't actually ask for any evidence or receipts. So a lot of people say that, make sure you don't bin your receipts. They've never asked me for any receipts or any evidence. But what I will say is that obviously it has to be legit, because I do know that some people, when they've submitted forms, FEO Student Services has replied back basically saying, we don't understand how it costed you this much to get to here. Can you please clarify? And then obviously it would be nice to attach receipts and stuff like that. So occasionally they will ask and they will reply back saying that, how did it cost you this much when it should have costed you this much, etc. But obviously that's if it's like a blatant lie, or you blatantly trying to just get some money from the NHS. So obviously you do have to be legit, but they're not going to ask you for any receipts or anything like that. But just make it legit, because I assume they do some random audit. So I assume that every whatever X number of forms they'll ask you for evidence, but that's just my assumption. Then you talk about how you travel normally to a place of study. So for me, it's public transport. I normally travel to South Kensington using public transport, and it costs me £9.30 usually outside of 50th year medicine. So say for example last year management, it costed me £9.30 each day to get to uni. So that's it's pretty simple. And obviously if you live in Hammersmith usually, and your normal place of study is Charing Cross, then obviously it will cost you £0, because you can just walk to Charing Cross Hospital. You can just walk to university, so it's going to cost you £0. It's fine. You just say walk and £0. It's not a big deal. If you drive your own vehicle, then you fill out this bit here. Now here is the details of your practice placement. So this one is an example for St. Peter's. First of all, do you receive any financial help from your university? I put no. I don't know quite what this is, but I think it's sometimes the university will, some universities in the UK, they might reimburse you directly, or whatever. In which case you put yes. But as far as I know, Imperial doesn't do that for any of his fans, so I put no. Full address of your practice placement site. So I put St. Peter's. The postcode there, I should have put it there, but whatever. So here's where the distinction is made, whether you use public transport or drive. So I drove to St. Peter's. It was 68 miles return every day, 34 miles there, 34 miles back. And obviously that's a lot, but that's because it's motorway. so it's not that much. But say for example for my St. Mary's placement, I take this box instead because I use public transport to get to St. Mary's. The total cost of my daily return journey was £17. And obviously the numbers might seem a bit weird, but that's because I live outside London, so it's not the same cost as if you live inside London. But ignoring the actual numbers, so if you use public transport, you put your daily return journey. So say for example it's £1.50 bus there, £1.50 bus back, you put £3 there. Yeah. So then moving on, this bit obviously doesn't apply to us. The actual details of the claim. This is a long bit, but again, you can just copy and paste. So here you need each date that you went into your actual firm. So for say for example for my St. Peter's one, it was pretty much every day except for Wednesdays. And St. Mary's was probably quite similar. You put your postcode form, so that would be my home address. Again, if you live in Hammersmith or West Kensington, it would be that address. It's simple stuff, but obviously there's so many misconceptions about how hard it is to fill out this form, how complex it is. It's really not that difficult, especially when they give you the actual guide on how to fill it out. But anyway, and then you put your postcode too. So this is the St. Mary's postcode. So now if you're doing public transport, you just put how you got there by public transport. So I put train and tube/bus, and it costed me £17 each day to get there and back. If you're driving, then you fill out the different fields. So here's my St. Peter's postcode, 68 miles each day. So it's just copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. And if you paid for car parking at St. Peter's, it was free, but some places like Northwick or West Middlesex or whatever, you might have to pay for car parking. So if it's £5 each day, £5 each there. It's simple stuff. And you could just total up the number of miles there. Or say for example for my St. Mary's placement, it's £187 in total. It costed me to get to and from my St. Mary's placement. Placement accommodation costs. So sometimes the university will reimburse you for, say for example, if you need to stay in a hotel for a couple of days or something like that, but that's only in exceptional circumstances. So the examples they give is for sixth year. When you're in sixth year, you have a GP placement outside London, and so you might have to stay in a hotel or an Airbnb or something like that. So they allow you to reimburse for that. I think they reimburse maybe up to £50 per night, but I wouldn't necessarily use it for this year because when I emailed FEO Student Services, they said it's on a case-by-case basis basically. So most of the time it's not going to apply to us because all our placements are within London, and often they give accommodation as well. But this is useful to know for sixth year that they reimburse you for your accommodation. Now here you make a summary of your claim. This is section 7 is all about making a summary of your claim and totaling up all the costs. So first of all, I'll go through the driving one. This bit you fill in if you drove or you took a bike. Essentially you total up the number of miles that you took. So for me it was 68 times 14, which is 952 miles, and they reimburse quite a lot per mile. 28 pence per mile is a lot, especially if you do motorway driving. So for me they wanted to reimburse me 266.52. If you're doing public transport, you don't fill out this section because this is for bicycle and driving. Also, another thing to mention is if you are driving and you take other people, they actually reimburse you for that as well. So especially if you take another 3 or 4 people, you can actually get reimbursed quite a lot. As you go down, here's where you just tally up your costs. So this is my St. Mary's placement. The total public transport cost is £187. The way you get that is obviously you just 17 times 11, 187. And my driving one is £266.52, which is from here. And now here's where you have to subtract your normal cost to university. Now for me, say my St. Peter's placement, it costed me £130.20 to get to, it would have usually cost me £130.20 to get to South Kensington every day. Now how did I work this out? Obviously it's quite simple. I went in for 14 days and I said it usually cost me £9.30 per day. So if I went in for 14 days and it cost me £9.30 per day, obviously, then it works out to £130.20. Now my St Mary's placement, £102.50. How did I work that out? It costed me £9.30 usually to get to university, and I went in for 11 days. So it's simple. And then you work out the difference between them. So it's basically the total cost of your travel placement minus the total normal cost, however much it would have usually cost you to get to South Kensington or Charing Cross, and that's how much you can claim for. So for my St Mary's one, I claim back for £84. For my St Peter's one, I claim back £136. Obviously my numbers are a lot bigger than most other people's because I commute from outside of London into London. But even then, you can still claim back quite a bit, especially if you are placed at somewhere like Norfolk Park or Hillingdon or something. And the important thing to note as well is if you do live within Hammersmith, and your usual cost to get to university is £0 because you just walk to the hospital, then every single penny that you spend on travel you can claim back. And this is why I don't understand why a lot of students don't claim back the money, because every single penny that you spend, you'll be able to claim back if you usually just walk to university. So I hope that makes sense. So I would definitely try and fill out this form and work out how much you can claim back. So basically, once you fill out this form, and obviously make sure you fill it out properly, otherwise they'll email back saying that you haven't filled it out properly. You have to resubmit it. But you come down to the bottom here and you just have to sign and put the date that you're doing it for. And when you scroll down, you don't have to do this bit. This bit is actually the university does this bit, and I'll tell you how to send it to the university. So all you need to do is just up to this bit here. So once you've done the form, and I would recommend you just do one form at a time. So you do one form, submit it, get the money for that, and then do the next form rather than submitting multiple forms. Otherwise you just get confused and they'll get confused as well. Okay, so once you've done the forms, what do you do next? Now, first thing to do is download your student cover sheet, because you'll need to submit this with each claim. Like I said, the way you get that is you go on your NHS Boss account, and it's here, student cover sheet. Just download that, put it into your folder here so it's always there. So you have your student cover sheet and you have your completed form. What you do now is you send it to FEO Student Services. And here is FEO Student Services. Now, outside of COVID times, you would actually go to the FEO counter in Charing Cross Hospital and you would drop these forms off. But obviously, because of COVID, it's closed. So you just send it to FEO Student Services, attach your completed form, and attach your student cover sheet as well. You don't have to say anything fancy. Just say, please find attached my completed form alongside my student cover sheet. The FEO Student Services will check that everything's legit and everything looks fine. If they see that something doesn't look quite right, they'll email you asking you more details about how it costs you to do X amount or whatever, and why didn't you take a cheaper route. But that's never happened to me, but I know it has happened to other people. If they see that everything's fine, they'll authorize it and forward onto the NHS, and that's it. Basically, the NHS will then refund you, and the way they refund you is based on your SBA number, because your SBA number will be tied to a bank account that you put in. So that's basically everything about how to submit the travel expenses. Obviously, sorry it wasn't a nicely edited video with a bunch of graphics, but I couldn't really be bothered. But it's just important to know this, because a lot of students don't know how to submit forms, and I end up spending so much time each week talking to people about how to claim back travel expenses. So I thought I'd just make a video that everyone can use, and I don't have to spend any more time telling people about how to apply for this kind of stuff. So I hope that was useful. Any questions, just let me know, and yeah.